All right, welcome back. So we're back to talking about Descartes. Uh, in the last video, what we ended with is that Descartes has this method of doubt test, and he thinks a belief needs to pass the method of doubt test in order to count as knowledge, and a belief passes if the truth of the belief cannot be doubted. And so what he comes up with are some beliefs about what's going on in his mind that he thinks pass the method of doubt test. So we've got I'm thinking, I am existing. Those beliefs pass because as soon as he doubts whether or not he's thinking or existing, he confirms that he is, because a doubting thing must be thinking or a doubting thing must be existing. He also thinks that you can't be mistaken about the way things seem to you. Um, you have that feeling that something seems a certain way or appears a certain way. You can't be mistaken that you're having the feeling. You can be mistaken about what's going on outside of your mind, but you can't be mistaken about the feeling that you're having in your mind. So, this is all self knowledge. What Descartes wants to do next, and so I'm going to tell you about some ideas that he has later on in his meditations. Remember how his meditations are kind of like a diary that he's keeping. We're moving into some later meditations, later diary entries, if you will, where he wants to provide an argument. And it's going to be a long argument the way I'm setting it up, and I'm going to try to go through it slowly. But it's going to be an argument for knowledge of the world outside of our minds. Remember how he wants to build this foundation that saves our knowledge of math and science, things that he cares so much about. Remember how he created the Cartesian coordinates, which allows you to sort of use math to describe material objects in the world. And so he's very committed to math and science counting as knowledge, and he wants us to be able to have that count as knowledge, even when we assume that in order for something to be knowledge, it can't possibly be mistaken, because he's believing that guaranteed justified true belief theory of knowledge, and he wants our knowledge to be guaranteed to be true. But the problem is that for the things that exist outside of our minds, it's very easy for us to imagine that they don't pass the method of doubt test. So, for example, Governor Stein lives in Raleigh. All right, that's not about what's happening in my mind. That's about this person outside of my mind and where he lives. Um, it seems like that belief could be mistaken, because there could be an evil demon making us think that there is such a being as Governor Stein when there isn't really. The evil demon could make us think that there's a place like Raleigh when there really isn't. Um, and he believes that an evil demon could be deceiving us. So it just seems like it's going to be really hard for him to save our knowledge of the external world, given the hypothetical of an evil demon, which he created. All right, so I'm going to show you his argument for knowledge of the external world. We're going to go through it slowly. It is on the long side, um, and we'll see how it shapes up. So, the first premise is where he talks about, and he talks about this quite a bit, clear and distinct ideas. So, he says, all clear and distinct ideas must be true. The way he talks about it, it is kind of vague. It would be ideal if he was a little clearer about what he means by clear and distinct. Um, but he's thinking about somebody who's thinking rationally in a moment. Remember how he starts out his meditations thinking of, you know, putting himself in a state where he's not agitated. He's got the day ahead of him. He's relaxed. He's using his faculties. He's not under the influence of anything. So, clear and distinct ideas are ideas that you would have in those conditions. You're thinking clearly about something. You're using your rationality. We're going to call those CD beliefs, clear and distinct beliefs, or clear and distinct ideas. So he's going to end up using God to save our knowledge of the external world. He believes in God. So he says, my idea that God is perfect is clear and distinct. So when he's thinking clearly and rationally, not agitated by anything about God, he comes to the idea that God is perfect. So that's why he believes premise two, that um, the whole concept of God is of a perfect being. And so then we get the conclusion that God is perfect must be true. All right. Well, that's just part of the argument, um, but it is an important part of his argument that he is going to be appealing to God to save math and science as knowledge. Next, number four. If God is perfect, must be true, which is what three just showed us. Then God exists and is no deceiver. So, in support of that, God thinks that deceiving and not existing would count as imperfection. So if God is perfect, then God would have to exist, because God, like dying or never existing, would be an imperfection. Um, God also would be good and as good as can be. So it wouldn't be a something that deceives would not be a good being. Um, so Descartes believes that if God is perfect, must be true, then God exists and is no deceiver, because God is supposed to be perfect and those are imperfections. Next, number five, if God exists and is no deceiver, then all clear and distinct ideas must be true. Okay, so if we're doing a good job reasoning, we're putting ourselves in a position where we can think clearly, we're not agitated, we're not under the influence of anything, we're thinking as clearly as we can, and we end up arriving at a clear and distinct idea. So, what if you come up with the idea that there's a dog at my feet? And by the way, my dog is always at my feet when I'm sitting in this chair. So, there he is. I'm looking down at my dog, and I'm having the clear and distinct belief that my dog is at my feet. This is a belief about the world outside of my mind, because the dog is not in my mind. I'm purporting that the dog is at my feet. Um, so Descartes thinks that if we're doing a good job reasoning and we end up coming up with a clear and distinct idea, like I'm having the belief right now that my dog is at my feet, then God would not allow that idea to be false. Again, God is not a deceiving being. God would not be a trickster and allow us to do such a good job reasoning and come up with something when it's really not true. So, all clear and distinct ideas must be true, because God would not treat us that way. He wouldn't allow us to do such a good job thinking and then have our thought come out false. So we get number six, therefore, all clear and distinct ideas must be true. Um, for example, again, I have the clear and distinct idea that there's a dog at my feet. That idea now must be true. All right, number seven. And this is the last slide for this argument. It's a 10-step argument, as you can see. It's a long one. It's basically a series of smaller arguments put together. Um, so number seven, clear and distinct ideas about the external world are clear and distinct. That's sort of true by definition, right? That if it's a clear and distinct belief, it's clear and distinct. So we get number eight, all clear and distinct beliefs about the external world must be true. Again, my clear and distinct belief that the dog is at my feet must be true. Number nine, if a belief must be true, it's not possible for it to be mistaken. Again, that's sort of a definition, that if something must be true, it can't possibly be false. It's guaranteed to be true, or in other words, there's no possible world in which the belief is false. That's why he believes number nine, that if something must be true, it's not possible for it to be mistaken. Must must be means guaranteed, or no way to be false. So then we get the conclusion that it's not possible for a clear and distinct idea or belief about the external world to be mistaken. So again, if you're doing a really good job rationally thinking, you come up with a clear and distinct belief, um, it it's not possible for that to be mistaken. What would be examples of clear and distinct beliefs? Well, this is where we're going to get math and science. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. You get yourself in a clear state of mind, you're going to come up with that being true. So clearly and distinctly, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Or you might do an experiment in science and come up with, when we mix these two um, substances, we end up getting a gas visually. So, like all these things that we use our mind for. Remember the a priori beliefs, like 2 plus 2 equals 4. Um, those beliefs are going to be clear and distinct. Beliefs that we use based on the senses, where our senses are being used with a rational mind attached to it. So, again, you might see a pink elephant if you're under the influence of some hallucinatory drug. You're not thinking clearly and distinctly right there, but if you've put yourself in a rational state of mind and you see that there's like, um, let's see, a gas coming from a beaker, then that's a clear and distinct belief. And his conclusion here, number 10, is that it's not possible for that belief about the external world to be mistaken. So it's a really important argument for him to save our knowledge of math and science. However, there are objections. So there's an objection to premise 4. So let's look at premise 4 again. If God is perfect, must be true, then God exists and is no deceiver. And again, the idea is that God is perfect and a perfect being would not deceive. But against premise 4, someone might object that a perfect being might deceive us if it's for our own good. Imagine that a person will be happier in the last few months of their life if they don't actually know that they have a fatal disease. So perhaps a perfect being would would um, would deceive them and not let them believe that they have a fatal disease so that their last months are happier. Or perhaps a person would be happier if they didn't know that other people were mocking them or laughing at them behind their back. So uh, a, a perfect being would deceive them about the people laughing at them behind their back so that they don't know about such things that would make them unhappy. A perfect being would want us to be happy, and consequently, they might still deceive us from time to time. So, premise 4 is saying if God is perfect, then God would be no deceiver. The objection is there might be some times when God would deceive us when it makes us happier. All right, there's another objection, and this is an objection about the argument begging the question. So begging the question means that an argument begs the question means that it has a premise that is the same thing that it's trying to prove. It's assuming what it's trying to prove. So if we look at 6, so that's a conclusion. It says therefore. So he's trying to prove that all clear and distinct ideas must be true. That's an important step for him to get to. The first premise is one of the premises that's supposed to lead to that conclusion. All clear and distinct ideas must be true. Well, let's just look at this slowly. Number 1, all clear and distinct ideas must be true. Number 6, all clear and distinct ideas must be true. They say the same thing. So if we ask ourselves, why do we believe that all clear and distinct ideas must be true in number 6? We go back to number 1 that says all clear and distinct ideas must be true. And then we end up in this endless loop. We're always asking ourselves, why must all clear and distinct ideas be true? We don't end up getting an answer. Ideally, Descartes would give us a separate argument for why all clear and distinct ideas must be true, especially given what we learned in the previous video about how our beliefs could be false. Um, because of an evil demon. Even like 2 plus 2 equals 4 could be false because the evil demon could be giving us mistaken concepts of 2 and equals and plus and so on. So, like, on the face of it, it seems like a clear and distinct idea could be wrong, even if you've put yourself in a good state of mind, and you're thinking rationally. There could still be this evil demon that's making you think the thing is true when it's really not. I'm looking at my dog and I'm thinking to myself, my dog is at my feet. I'm not agitated. I'm reasoning to my best of my ability. And yet it still seems possible that an evil demon could be making me think that when it's really not. Um, so it's not obvious how Descartes is going to give us an argument for number one, that all clear and distinct ideas must be true. It does seem like he needs to give us an argument for that, given that the evil demon thought experiment teaches us that they might clear and distinct ideas could be false. Also, he tried to prove in 6 that all clear and distinct ideas must be true, but he seems to beg the question because he has in number 1 the very same idea. And then there's also this objection to the argument that number 4 isn't correct because a god might deceive someone if it's for their own good. So at this point, this has been Descartes' project. He wants to go along with the the guaranteed, justified, true belief theory of knowledge, that in order to know something, it has to be guaranteed to be true. And he wants to nonetheless prove that we have knowledge of the world outside of our minds, knowledge of math and science. This is the argument he puts forward to it. There are objections to this argument. Other philosophers besides Descartes have tried to come up with different theories of knowledge other than the guaranteed justified true belief theory. So that's a route other philosophers have tried to go. They've tried to come up with a theory of knowledge so that it's not as strict. So you don't have to have guaranteed belief. But that's kind of where philosophers are right now. So some philosophers um, like the guaranteed justified true belief theory of knowledge, and they end up going along with the idea that we don't have knowledge of the world outside of our minds. Others try to save knowledge of the world outside of our minds by coming up with a different theory of knowledge other than the GJTB one. So that's kind of where we're at right now with philosophy and trying to save our knowledge of the world outside of our minds. I'll let you think about why you think there is knowledge of the world outside of your mind. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you. Bye bye.